I always thought fear had a sound, a quick flutter in your chest, a gasp that catches in your throat. But that night, fear came to me in a whisper from my 8-year-old grandson. We were at Hartsfield-Jackson Airport, seeing my daughter Tiana off on another business trip. The terminal lights glowed too bright for that hour, reflecting off the polished floor like restless ghosts. I stood beside little Micah, clutching his small hand while Tiana adjusted her blazer and smiled that polite, distant smile she'd worn for months now. "It's just 3 days, Mama," she said, kissing my cheek. "You and Micah will be fine." She always said that. We'd be fine. And most days we were. Ever since her husband Eric passed 3 years ago, we'd been living together in that big house on Magnolia Street. I helped raise Micah while Tiana buried herself in her real estate work. I thought it was just her way of coping. Until recently, when her warmth turned to frost. When she walked toward the gate, I watched her shoulders stiffen under the yellow light. Micah's dinosaur backpack dangled from one arm, his eyes following her every step. That's when he tugged on my sleeve, hard. "Grandma," he whispered, his voice trembling like a leaf in wind. "Don't go back home." I froze. "What did you say, baby? Please." "Don't go back," he insisted, his grip tightening. "Mama's planning something. I heard her this morning. Please believe me." His little face was pale, eyes wide with terror. The words didn't make sense at first. "Tiana?" "My Tiana, she loved us." "Didn't she?" I forced a shaky laugh. "Sweetheart, you must have misunderstood, and your mama's just tired." Micah shook his head violently. "No, Grandma." I heard her say it. She said something about the gas and no mistakes, and that it would look like an accident. My heart slammed against my ribs. For a second, the airport noise faded. No rolling suitcases, no boarding calls, just the echo of those impossible words. I knelt to face him. "Micah, what did she mean by that?" He looked around, making sure no one could hear. "She was on the phone. She said, 'Everything's ready for tonight.'" "Grandma," she said, "tonight." Tonight. The word hung in the air like a curse. I didn't ask another question. I just took his hand and ran toward the parking lot. My thoughts spun. Maybe it was a misunderstanding. Maybe he dreamed it. But deep down, a mother's instinct screamed otherwise. As we stepped into the cool night air, the automatic doors slid shut behind us. For the first time in my life, I was afraid of my own child. And as I gripped the steering wheel with trembling hands, Micah's whisper still echoed in my head, a whisper that would change everything. That night on the road, I realized running was the easy part. Believing what my grandson had heard, that was the nightmare just beginning. The road stretched out before us, dark and endless, swallowed by the Georgia night. My hands were trembling on the steering wheel, but I kept driving, anywhere that wasn't home. Micah sat beside me, clutching his backpack like it held his whole world. The streetlights flashed across his small face, and each flicker showed another layer of fear he was trying so hard to hide. "Baby," I finally said, my voice barely steady, "I need you to tell me everything you heard this morning. Every single word." Micah hesitated, looking out the window as if afraid the night could listen. "Mama was up really early," he whispered. "I thought she was making breakfast, but she went to the office." I peeked through the door crack. I nodded slowly, my stomach twisting. She was talking to someone on the phone. I couldn't see who. She said, "They'll be asleep by midnight. Make sure there are no mistakes this time." He swallowed hard, eyes glistening. Then she said, "The gas line's ready." My breath caught. "The gas line?" I asked, but the words came out like a croak. Micah nodded, his voice shaking. And then she said something about insurance, that after it's done, everything will be hers. "Grandma," she said it like we weren't real people, just a problem to fix. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. I remembered how Tiana had been talking about refinancing the house, asking about the insurance papers Eric left. At the time, I thought it was harmless, the practical side of grief. But now those same details felt poisoned. "She was laughing, Grandma," Micah whispered. She laughed after she hung up. Something inside me cracked wide open. My baby girl. The child I raised alone, the one I once rocked to sleep under soft lullabies. Plotting this? No, it couldn't be true. But then I remembered the cold way she hugged me at the airport, the way she looked through me instead of at me. There was something gone in her eyes, something hollow. I gripped Micah's hand. You did the right thing telling me, sweetheart. You saved us. He looked up at me, tears trembling on his lashes. You believe me this time? Those words hit deep. I had brushed off so many of his small warnings before, the noises at night, the whispers from the hallway. But now there was no denying the truth. Yes, baby, I whispered. I believe you. And I promise you, we're not going home tonight. Micah let out a shaky breath, his small shoulders easing just a little. But as I checked the rearview mirror, I caught sight of a pair of headlights following us. Too close, too long. Someone was behind us on that empty road, and deep down, I already knew who it was. The headlights stayed in my mirror far too long to be a coincidence. Every turn I made, every stoplight I slowed through, that same pair of lights hovered, always 2 car lengths back. Grandma, Micah whispered, his voice tight. Why are they still behind us? I didn't answer. My pulse was pounding too loud for words. I turned off the main road onto a side street lined with old oak trees. The kind that swallowed the moonlight. The headlights followed again, slow, deliberate. That's when I knew. Someone was watching us, maybe even tracking us. Tiana had always been precise, planned everything, from her outfits to her appointments down to the minute. If she had truly planned what Micah overheard, she wouldn't leave loose ends. She'd make sure her plan ran perfectly, including keeping tabs on us. I took a deep breath and forced calm into my voice. Hold tight, baby. Grandma's just taking a different way, okay? Micah nodded, clutching his backpack. I could see his reflection in the windshield, his eyes wide but unblinking, like he understood far more than a child should. I made another sharp turn, then killed my headlights and rolled to a stop behind a closed diner. My old Chevy sat heavy in the dark. For a few tense seconds, I watched the road. The car passed by, slow enough that I caught a glimpse of it under the streetlight. A black sedan. Windows tinted, it wasn't Tiana's car, but I recognized it. Derek's. My stomach turned cold. Tiana's new boyfriend, the man she claimed was helping her handle things. The same man I never trusted. Micah whispered, That's him, Grandma. The man I saw outside the house last week. That was all I needed to hear. I started the car again and drove straight toward the highway, heart hammering like a drumbeat in my ears. I didn't know where I was headed, just away. We drove for over an hour, city lights fading into stretches of lonely road. Micah eventually dozed off, his head resting on the seat, his fingers still gripping that backpack like a lifeline. As the night deepened, pieces started clicking into place in my mind. The insurance calls, the sudden trip, the fake cheer in Tiana's voice. It wasn't stress. It was setup, and now Derek was the enforcer behind it all. I pulled into a 24-hour gas station on the edge of town, my body trembling. I filled the tank, trying to steady my breathing. That's when my phone vibrated. The screen flashed with one name I prayed never to see that night. Tiana. I froze. Her flight should have been long gone. Slowly, I answered. Hello? Her voice came soft, almost sweet. Mama, where are you? You should have been home an hour ago. I looked at the mirror. The parking lot behind me empty, silent, except for one black sedan creeping past the pumps. If Tiana was calling me from her phone, then who was driving Derek's car right past where I stood? Mama! Tiana's voice came through the phone, smooth but tense, the kind of tone people use when they're smiling through their teeth. Where are you? You didn't answer my messages. My hand trembled around the phone. Oh, we just stopped to grab dinner. I lied, forcing calm into my voice. Micah wanted pancakes. A pause. I could almost hear her thinking. Dinner? At this hour? She asked softly. Where? I swallowed hard. That diner near the shopping center, I said vaguely, though I had no clue what diner I was even pretending to be at. Her tone shifted slightly, too quick to hide. That's nice. You two always did love your little late-night adventures. Then silence again. Long, loaded silence. My heart was pounding so loud I thought she'd hear it through the line. I tried to sound casual. Shouldn't you be on your flight by now? Another pause. Then she said something that made my stomach turn cold. There was a delay. I didn't go, I froze. What do you mean you didn't go? Her voice hardened just a little, but still calm, too calm. The flight got pushed to the morning. I'm heading back home now. Everything's fine, Mama. You don't need to worry. I nearly dropped the phone. Her words didn't fit the pattern. Tiana was meticulous, obsessive about travel plans. She'd check flight statuses hours in advance. She never just missed a flight. That meant one thing. She was lying. Oh, that's too bad, I managed. Well, we'll see you in the morning then. Sure, she said, her tone suddenly sweet again. Don't rush. Take your time. Enjoy dinner. Click, the line went dead. I stared at the phone, my hands shaking so hard I almost dropped it. That wasn't a check-in, that was a test. She wanted to know if we were still home, and if she knew we weren't. She might know why. The black sedan outside drifted by again, slower this time, its headlights washing over the glass storefronts. I ducked lower in my seat and reached for Micah's shoulder. He stirred awake, rubbing his eyes. Grandma? What's wrong? Nothing, baby, I said, even though my throat was dry. We're just gonna keep moving, okay? Micah's voice came small, afraid. Was that Mama? I hesitated. Yes. He sat up straight, wide-eyed. She's coming back, isn't she? I looked at those headlights disappearing down the road, or maybe circling the block. I think so, I whispered. I didn't want to scare him, but I knew we couldn't go home. Not tonight. Not ever, if she really meant what she'd said. Somewhere deep inside, the part of me that had always forgiven her began to crumble. Because my daughter, my baby girl, was now hunting me. And the one place left where I could hide was the last place Tiana would ever think to look. An old friend's door I swore I'd never knock on again. By the time the city lights faded behind us, my nerves were shot. I hadn't slept, hadn't eaten, just driven. The only thing keeping me upright was instinct and fear. Micah sat in the back seat, hugging his backpack, whispering under his breath. I couldn't make out the words, but I knew he was praying. We needed somewhere safe. Somewhere Tiana wouldn't think to look. And there was only one name that came to mind, a name I hadn't said in years. Luther Bryant. He'd been our neighbor back when Tiana was still in high school. A kind, quiet man who used to fix everyone's locks and mow the widow's lawns for free. After his wife passed, he became a night security guard downtown. I hadn't seen him since I moved in with Tiana 3 years ago. But Luther had always been loyal, discreet, the kind of man who knew how to keep a secret. When I pulled into the back alley behind his building, the streets were nearly empty. I parked behind the dumpsters, turned off the engine, and sat still, listening to the ticking of the cooling motor. Grandma, Micah whispered. Where are we? Somewhere safe, baby, I said softly, brushing his hair back. Somewhere Mama won't find us. I helped him out of the car, and we walked quietly through the shadows toward the small basement apartment that Luther rented under the building. The hallway light flickered overhead, casting long, tired shadows on the peeling paint. When I knocked, it took a moment before I heard the slow shuffle of footsteps. The door creaked open just enough for one weary brown eye to peek out. Miss Loretta? His voice was a whisper of disbelief. Lord, what on earth you doing here at this hour? Luther, I said, my own voice trembling. I need your help, please. He took one look at Micah, scared, shivering, and opened the door without another question. Inside, the apartment smelled faintly of coffee and old books. Luther poured Micah a mug of hot chocolate and gave me one of his shirts to warm up. Only after we'd both settled did he finally ask, What's going on, Loretta? And so, I told him everything. From the airport to the call. From the gas leak plan to the headlights that followed us. By the time I finished, Luther's eyes were wide with shock. Lord have mercy, he muttered. That's your own daughter? I nodded, tears stinging my eyes. She's not the same girl I raised, Luther. There's something broken in her. Something dark. He rubbed his chin, deep in thought. You can stay here as long as you need. I'll keep watch tonight. Micah curled up on the couch, fast asleep before I even turned off the lamp. But I couldn't close my eyes, because I knew this was just a pause, not an end. And before the sun came up, I'd already decided I had to go back home, alone. I didn't sleep a single second that night. Every creak in Luther's small apartment felt like footsteps. Every sound from the street made my pulse jump. Micah lay curled on the sofa under an old quilt, his chest rising and falling peacefully. Watching him sleep should have calmed me, but instead it filled me with dread. He was too young to carry the kind of fear that lived in his eyes now. Luther poured us both coffee when the sky began to lighten. He was dressed, ready for his night shift, but I could tell he wasn't planning on going anywhere. You sure you don't want to let the police handle this, Loretta? I shook my head slowly. And tell them what? That my daughter's trying to kill me based on what an 8-year-old overheard? I sighed. They'd think I've lost my mind. He rubbed his jaw. Still better than walking straight into a snake's nest. I looked down at my hands. They were trembling again. I have to, I whispered. If what Micah heard is true, there's proof somewhere in that house. Documents, plans, something. If I can find it, then the police will have no choice but to believe us. Loretta, you can't go alone. I'll be careful. That's when Micah stirred, sitting up groggily, rubbing his eyes. Go where, Grandma? I forced a smile, but my voice cracked. Just back home for a little while, sweetheart. I need to check something. His eyes widened instantly. No, you can't. Mama might come back. He slid off the sofa and wrapped his small arms around me. Please don't go. I don't want anything to happen to you. My throat tightened. I held him close, breathing in the faint scent of cocoa in his hair. I'll be okay, baby. Mr. Luther's gonna stay with you. Micah shook his head hard. She's dangerous, Grandma. I heard her talking to someone about timing it right. I think she's working with that man, Derek. That name hit me like a cold slap. The man with the black sedan. I met Luther's eyes. He already knew what I was thinking. Fine, he said, sighing heavily. If you're going, I'm driving. I'll park down the block. You go in, grab what you need, and if I don't see you in 20 minutes, I'm calling the police. Micah started to cry quietly, clutching my hand. Promise you'll come back, Grandma. I knelt and kissed his forehead. I promise, baby. You're my reason to come back. As the sun broke over the rooftops, Luther handed me a small burner phone. No trace. 1 ring if you're safe, 2 if there's trouble. I nodded, pocketed it, and stepped outside. The air felt too still, too quiet. I didn't know it yet, but what waited inside that house would prove worse than I ever imagined. Because sometimes the truth doesn't just scare you. It changes everything you thought you knew about love, family, and survival. By the time Luther's old pickup rolled to a stop down the block from my house, my hands had gone numb. I stared at the dark outline of the place I once called home, the porch where Tiana took her prom pictures, the window where I'd rocked Micah to sleep. Now it felt like a stranger's house, a place holding its breath, waiting. Luther gripped the steering wheel. You remember the plan? He said quietly. 20 minutes. No more, I nodded, too scared to speak. My heart thudded so loud I could hear it in my ears. I stepped out, closing the door softly, then moved through the shadows toward the back entrance. The key in my trembling hand felt heavier than it ever had before. The moment I pushed the door open, the smell hit me, faint, chemical, and wrong. Not gas, something sweeter, sharper, almost like cleaning fluid. I froze. The kitchen looked just as I'd left it, dishes in the sink, my sweater draped over a chair. But something about it felt staged, too neat, too still. I took out the small flashlight from my pocket and began the climb upstairs, careful to step over the boards I knew would creak. The house hummed with silence. Tiana's office door was locked, just as I expected. But I'd raised that girl. I'd learned to unlock this door years ago when she'd slammed it shut as a rebellious teenager. I pulled a bobby pin from my hair and went to work. My fingers shook so hard it took nearly a minute, but finally, click. The door swung open. Her office was spotless. Every paper squared, every shelf lined in cold perfection. I didn't even recognize it anymore. I started searching, drawers, folders, the wastebasket, nothing, until I reached the bottom drawer of the desk. There, tucked beneath company documents, was a red folder. I knew right away it didn't belong. Everything else in this room was gray, beige, neutral. But this folder, it almost seemed to glow under my flashlight. When I opened it, my knees nearly gave out. Inside were papers, insurance policies, bank statements, and transfer receipts with my name on them. Huge sums of money being moved to an account under D. Miles. Derek. At the back was a handwritten note in Tiana's sharp script. Once done, call Derek before dawn. House will be deemed accidental. Payout within 30 days. My chest burned. My own daughter had written instructions for how to kill me. I pulled out my phone and snapped pictures of every page, my breath trembling. That's when I heard it, the faint sound of a door opening downstairs. Someone had just come in. And as slow, heavy footsteps started climbing those stairs, I realized the 20 minutes were up, and I wasn't alone in the house anymore. The sound came again, slow, deliberate steps moving across the floor below me. I froze, clutching the flashlight against my chest. My pulse thudded in my ears, louder than those footsteps, louder than reason. No one should have been here. Tiana was supposed to be gone. Derek, too. But the way those steps moved, heavy, unhurried, told me neither of those things was true. I pressed the flashlight against my leg to kill the beam and slipped behind the office door, barely daring to breathe. The room smelled faintly of perfume and paper, everything too calm for the panic clawing inside my chest. The floorboards groaned again. The steps reached the top of the stairs. "Marcus, check upstairs," a woman's voice called faintly from below. Tiana. My stomach twisted. My baby girl. My child who used to braid her doll's hair on this same carpet, now giving orders to the man who wanted me dead. "On it," a deep male voice replied. "Marcus." No, not Marcus. Derek. The handle of the office door twitched once, then again. I pressed myself flat against the wall, praying the darkness would hide me. The door creaked open halfway. Through the small crack of light, I saw a tall silhouette step inside. His boots thudded softly against the rug. He moved slow, scanning with a flashlight. I could hear his breathing, calm, steady, like a man who had done this before. "Mama?" Tiana's voice echoed faintly from the hallway. "You see anything?" He stopped moving. "No sign yet. Place looks empty. Check her room too," she called. If she came back, she might have tried to grab something. Their voices sliced through the air like a bad dream I couldn't wake from. My hands shook so hard I had to press them to my chest to stay quiet. Derek turned and left the room, his boots fading down the hall. I waited several seconds, maybe longer, before I dared to move. I stepped to the window and peered out just enough to see Luther's pickup still parked near the corner. I needed to warn him. My hand found the burner phone in my pocket. I pressed the 1 key and let it ring twice, the code for trouble. Then I hung up. Below, a door slammed. A man's shout, followed by the unmistakable sound of a struggle. "Who's there?" Tiana yelled. My heart dropped. Luther. He must have come to check on me. I backed away from the window, trembling so hard I could barely stand. My body screamed to run, but my mind knew. If I went downstairs, none of us would make it out alive. The only way to survive now was through the window, even if that meant a 20-foot fall into the darkness below. My whole body was trembling so bad I could hardly keep the flashlight steady. Downstairs I heard a scuffle, heavy boots on tile, a grunt, a crash. Then a man's voice, angry, rough. "Who are you, old man?" Luther. My heart seized. He'd come for me, and now they had him. I forced myself toward the office window, fighting the panic clawing up my throat. The frame was old, swollen with years of paint, and it took everything in me to lift it without making a sound. The cool night air rushed in, carrying the faint scent of cut grass and rain. Below, the drop looked farther than I remembered. 20 feet, maybe more. A fall like that could break bones, or worse. But staying meant something much deadlier. I heard Tiana's voice echo from below. "Make sure he doesn't call anyone." "Tie him up!" She sounded steady, cold. That calm tone she used when negotiating house deals, not realizing she was talking about binding and hurting a man I'd known half my life. Tears burned in my eyes. I didn't know her anymore. I didn't know this monster wearing my daughter's voice. I swung one leg over the window ledge, clutching the frame for balance. The ledge was narrow, barely wide enough for my old feet. My knees ached from the strain, my joints screaming. But I moved anyway. Fear will give strength where youth has left none. Below, shadows flickered from flashlights inside the house. Then a shout. "She's upstairs!" I froze. They knew. I reached for the ivy-covered lattice that ran down the side of the house, praying it was strong enough to hold me. My fingers dug into the vines, the wooden slats creaking under my weight. Inch by inch I climbed down, the rough wood scraping my palms. Behind me, the office door banged open. A beam of light swept across the room, catching the open window. "She went out the window!" Derek's voice boomed. The vines groaned under my weight as I slid lower, desperate now. My foot slipped, scraping against the wall, and for one terrifying second I was hanging only by my hands. I gasped and found footing again, forcing myself to keep going. Then came Tiana's voice, sharp, furious. "Find her!" "She can't be far." When my feet finally touched the damp grass, I could barely stand. My legs shook violently, but I didn't stop. I stumbled toward the back fence, heart hammering so loud it drowned everything else out. From inside came a thud, then Luther's strained voice, muffled, pleading. I bit back a sob. "I'm sorry, Luther," I whispered. "I'll come back for you. I swear I will." As I climbed over the fence and slipped into the neighboring yard, I didn't dare look back. Because I knew if I did, I might never have the strength to keep running. But when I finally reached the street and called 911, I had no idea if the police would believe me, or if they'd arrive in time to save Luther's life. By the time I reached the main road, my lungs were burning and my legs felt like lead. The cool night air bit into my skin, but I didn't stop running until I saw the glow of a gas station sign in the distance. I stumbled toward the payphone outside. It felt safer than using my own cell, just in case Tiana had some way to trace it. My fingers fumbled with the receiver. 911, I gasped. Please send someone to 214 Magnolia Street. There's a man tied up inside." My daughter. "My daughter's trying to kill us." The dispatcher's calm tone barely registered. "Ma'am, slow down. Are you safe right now?" "No," I whispered. "But I have proof. It was the only thing keeping me from breaking down. The photos I'd taken of Tiana's red folder." I looked through them again on my phone. The insurance policy, the account transfers, the handwritten notes. Every image felt like a knife. A car pulled into the lot, a black sedan. My breath hitched, but when the driver stepped out, I saw the blue uniform and badge. The police were here. 2 officers approached cautiously, hands resting on their belts. I explained everything: the gas leak plan, the insurance, the man named Derek Miles, the child who overheard it all. They exchanged wary looks but didn't interrupt. When I showed them the photos, something changed in their eyes. "All right, ma'am," the older officer said gently. "We'll check the property. You wait here in the patrol car." "No," I said firmly. "There's a man in there, Luther Bryant." He tried to help me. "Please, he's still alive." They must have seen the desperation in my face because they didn't argue. Within minutes, they called for backup and drove me toward my house. As we neared Magnolia Street, I saw the flashing red and blue lights reflecting off the trees. I held my breath as the officers moved in. Quiet, deliberate. Then, the sudden chaos. A shout, the sound of glass shattering. Another shout, "Hands up!" followed by a crash. My chest tightened until I thought it would split. I gripped the seat, whispering prayers. Then, out of the darkness, they brought him, Luther, limping, blood on his forehead, but alive. Relief crashed over me so hard I started to cry. The next man out wasn't so lucky. Derek Miles, handcuffed and snarling, his clothes torn, his face twisted with rage. He glared at me through the flashing lights, but there was no sign of Tiana. "She's gone," the officer said grimly. Back door was open. We're searching the area. Gone. My daughter had vanished into the night. I should have felt only anger, but all I felt was cold, hollow grief. She'd crossed a line I could never follow her past. But the nightmare wasn't over, because when I got back to Luther's apartment, my grandson Micah was gone too. When the police finally released me, the night sky had already started to fade to gray. The chaos at Magnolia Street felt like something out of someone else's life. Sirens, flashlights, yellow tape fluttering in the dawn wind. But the dread in my chest was my own. All I wanted was to get back to Micah, to hold him. To tell him it was finally over. Luther, still shaken and limping from the blow he took, insisted on driving me back to his apartment. His right arm was wrapped in a bandage, but his spirit was the same, steady and protective. "We'll get you both out of town by morning," he said. "I got a buddy in Macon, quiet place. Nobody'll find you there." I nodded numbly. "I just need to see my grandson." The streets were quiet as we pulled into the alley behind Luther's building. The sun was barely rising, painting the sky a pale, ghostly pink. Something about the silence felt wrong. When I stepped inside, that wrongness became certainty. The blanket Micah had slept under was crumpled on the sofa, his little backpack gone. The mug of cocoa Luther had made him sat on the table, still half full but cold. "Micah?" My voice broke on his name. "Baby, it's Grandma. You can come out now? Nothing." Just the hum of the old refrigerator and the faint echo of my heartbeat. I checked the bathroom. Empty. The kitchen. Empty. Then I saw it. Luther's back door, slightly ajar. Panic exploded inside me. No, no, no. I rushed to it and looked outside. The alley was deserted except for a small toy dinosaur lying on the ground. Micah's favorite. Luther bent down, his voice low and grim. Door wasn't forced. Somebody he trusted must have told him to come out. I froze, the air catching in my throat. Someone he trusted. The burner phone in my pocket buzzed suddenly. My stomach twisted as I pulled it out. "No caller ID, just an unknown number," I answered with shaking hands. "Micah?" Silence. Then a familiar voice, soft, almost sweet. "Hello, Mama." It was Tiana. My knees nearly gave out. "Where's my grandson?" I cried. "He's safe," she said calmly. "He was waiting by the door when I came." "You didn't tell him not to open for family." Her tone turned colder. "You should have trusted me, Mama. We could have handled this quietly." "Handled?" I hissed. "You tried to kill us." A sigh on the other end. "I never wanted it this way. But you made me desperate." I was shaking, my vision blurring with tears. "Please, Tiana, just let him go. He's just a child." She paused. Then, almost tenderly, she said, "Then come and get him." The line went dead. And for the first time, I realized I wasn't just fighting for my life anymore. I was fighting for his. Tiana had Micah, and I had nothing but a mother's fear, and a promise I was ready to die to keep. For a few seconds after that call, I couldn't move. The phone felt like ice in my hand, and the echo of Tiana's voice clung to the air like poison. "She's got him," I whispered, staring blankly at the wall. "She's got Micah." Luther's expression hardened. "Then we call the police again." "They'll put out an Amber Alert." "No!" My voice came out sharper than I expected. "She'll panic. If the police get too close, she might hurt him." I couldn't finish the sentence. The image alone made my knees weak. Luther ran a hand over his face, thinking hard. "All right then. We find her ourselves. She called from somewhere local. Can't be far." I replayed the conversation in my mind, every word, every tone. "There was noise in the background," I said softly. "Wind, I think. And a bell, like a church bell." Luther's brow furrowed. There's only one church around here with a bell tower that still works, St. David's out near the old mill. That was all I needed to hear. I grabbed my purse and the red folder with trembling hands. Then that's where we go. The drive out to St. David's felt endless, even though it couldn't have been more than 20 minutes. The rising sun painted everything gold, but there was no warmth in it. Only the feeling of something final. The church stood alone on the hill, surrounded by trees and wild grass. It had been closed for years after the roof caved in during a storm. Now it looked like a shell, haunted, hollow, forgotten. I stepped out of the truck. My body felt heavy, but my heart beat with one truth. My grandson was inside. Luther tried to stop me. "Loretta, don't go in there without a plan." I shook my head. "This is the plan." I pushed the old wooden doors open and stepped into the dark. Dust floated through beams of sunlight slicing through broken stained glass. And there, at the front of the room, I saw them. Tiana stood by the altar, her hair tied back, her eyes cold. Micah sat on one of the front pews, still wearing his little jacket, clutching his dinosaur toy. "Grandma!" he cried, standing up, but Tiana's hand shot out, holding him back. "Stay right there, baby," my voice broke. "Tiana, please, whatever this is, it doesn't have to end like this." She tilted her head slightly, her face unreadable. "You always said you'd do anything for family. Let's see if you meant it." And with that, she pulled a small pistol from her purse, its barrel glinting faintly in the fractured light. In that moment, I realized the truth. My daughter didn't just want me gone. She wanted to watch me choose between saving myself and saving him. For a moment, everything inside that church went still. The air, the dust, even my heartbeat. Tiana stood with the gun steady in her hand, her eyes locked on me. It wasn't rage in them this time. It was something far worse. A cold, flat emptiness. "Don't come any closer, Mama," she said softly. "You don't know what you're doing." I raised both hands, my palms trembling. "Tiana, please. You don't have to do this." "We can talk, baby," she laughed then, a sharp, broken sound. "Talk?" "You had years to listen, Mama. When Daddy died, when everything fell apart, you never heard me. You just prayed and hoped, and I had to fix everything." Her voice cracked, but the gun didn't waver. "Tiana," I whispered, "I know you're hurting. But this isn't fixing anything." Her eyes shimmered for half a second. A glimpse of my baby girl buried beneath the bitterness. Then it vanished. "You don't understand," she said, her tone flat again. "It's already done. The insurance, the documents, Derek made sure of that. Once you're gone, Micah's future is secure. No more bills. No more struggling. He'll be free." My heart dropped. "Free?" I stepped closer, my voice breaking. "You call losing his mother and grandmother freedom?" Her finger twitched on the trigger. "I'm doing this for him," Micah whimpered softly. "Mama, stop. Please." That sound, that tiny, pleading voice, cracked something deep inside her. For just a moment, her hand shook. The gun lowered slightly. I took a careful step forward. "That's it, baby. You love him. I know you do. You don't want him to see this. You don't want this memory to be what he carries." Her breathing hitched. Tears glistened at the corners of her eyes. "You think I wanted any of this?" she whispered. "You think I like feeling like a failure every day?" I swallowed hard. "You're not a failure, Tiana. You're my daughter. And no amount of money will ever change how much I love you." The gun wavered. Just a little more. I could feel it. But then a sound shattered the fragile calm, the crunch of gravel outside. Luther. Tiana's eyes darted toward the doorway, fear and fury flashing across her face. "You brought someone else?" "Tiana, no." Before I could finish, the gun swung back toward me. "Mama, stay back," she shouted, her voice breaking completely this time. "Don't make me do it!" I didn't move. I couldn't. The daughter I'd raised stood before me, shaking, crying, trapped inside her own storm. And I knew one thing for certain. If anyone was going to walk out of that church alive, it would have to be her child. So I made the hardest decision of my life. to stop pleading, and start fighting back. The moment Tiana turned the gun fully toward me, time slowed. Micah's frightened sob echoed off the cracked walls of that ruined church. Dust swirled in the beams of light, floating between us like ghosts. My daughter's hands trembled. She looked half crazed, half lost, like a woman split between guilt and desperation. "Put it down." "Tiana," I said softly, steadying my voice even though my heart was hammering so loud it felt like thunder in my ears. "You don't want to do this." Her finger hovered over the trigger. "You don't get it, Mama. It's too late now. I can't undo it. They'll come for me. Derek told me if I didn't finish this, he'd make sure they come for Micah instead." My blood ran cold. "What did you just say?" Tiana's tears spilled over, her voice breaking. "He said we'd all go down if I didn't finish what we started." "He's watching us, Mama. He never left." That was when I saw it. A faint red dot dancing on the wall beside her shoulder. A laser. "Oh, Lord," I gasped. "He's here." Before I could react, a gunshot exploded through the air. The stained glass behind me shattered, raining down shards of color and dust. I threw myself to the ground, grabbing Micah and pulling him under the nearest pew. "Tiana!" I screamed. She had dropped to her knees, the pistol skittering across the floor. The shot had missed her by inches. She looked stunned, then furious. "He's trying to kill me now." Another shot cracked through the air. This one hit the altar, splintering wood and sending a cloud of plaster into the air. I pulled Micah close, shielding him with my body. "Don't look, baby," I whispered. Tiana scrambled toward us, grabbing the fallen gun and aiming it toward the broken window. "You wanted this, Derek? You wanted to use me?" she screamed. "Come finish it yourself!" Outside, I could hear footsteps. Quick, deliberate. He was circling the building. Luther burst through the back door just then, gun drawn, shouting, "Police are on the way!" Tiana spun, startled, her eyes wide with terror. "No!" She fired, not at him, but at the floor, the sound deafening in the echoing hall. "Drop it!" Luther yelled. Her hands were shaking so hard she could barely keep her aim. The gun clattered from her grip and slid across the floor, stopping right beside me. Without thinking, I kicked it away, straight toward Luther. For the first time, Tiana's eyes met mine, truly met mine, and I saw the child she once was flicker through the chaos. "Tell him." "I'm sorry," she whispered. And before I could ask who she meant, the side door burst open and Derek stepped in, gun raised, face twisted with rage. In that instant, I realized the only person he'd ever planned to kill was all of us. The sound of Derek's boots echoed through that ruined church like thunder. His face was smeared with dirt and fury, eyes wild and unblinking. He held the gun steady, moving closer with every slow step. "End of the line," he growled. "You had one job, Tiana." Tiana backed away, shaking her head. "You said nobody would get hurt," he sneered. "I said they wouldn't get up again. You had your chance, princess. Now you're just another loose end," Micah whimpered, clutching my arm. I pulled him tight against me, whispering, "Don't move, baby. Don't even breathe." Luther edged behind a pillar, his own weapon drawn low. His eyes met mine for a fleeting second. Silent understanding. We both knew what had to happen. Derek stepped closer, gun swinging between me and Tiana. "Move away from the boy," he barked. Tiana froze. "Derek, please. He's just a child." "Collateral," Derek spat. "Insurance that you won't do anything stupid." I could barely see straight through my tears, but something inside me hardened. I'd spent my whole life protecting this family, holding it together through pain, loss, and betrayal. But I was done being afraid. "Tiana," I whispered, never taking my eyes off him. "You remember what your daddy always said?" She blinked through tears. "Mama, what are you—" "When someone threatens what's yours, you don't run, you stand." Before Derek could react, Luther shouted, "Now!" It all happened at once. Luther stepped out from the shadows, firing once. The shot went wide, hitting the wall behind Derek. The echo exploded through the church. Derek spun, shooting back. The bullet caught Luther in the shoulder, sending him sprawling. Tiana screamed and lunged toward Micah. I pushed him down behind the pew as Derek turned back toward us. I didn't think. I just moved. I grabbed the nearest thing within reach, an iron candle stand, and swung it with every ounce of strength left in my body. It struck Derek's wrist, and the gun flew from his hand, clattering across the floor. He roared, grabbing my arm and shoving me back. Pain exploded through my shoulder, but I refused to fall. I kicked at him, catching his knee. Tiana darted forward, snatching the gun from the floor. Her hands shook, eyes wide, breath ragged. "Don't!" Derek snarled. "You ain't built for this," her hand steadied. "You're right," she said softly. "But my mother is." And then, before I could stop her, Tiana turned and tossed the gun, straight to me. I caught it. Derek froze. For the first time, his confidence cracked. I raised the gun, both hands steady. "You should have left my family alone." One shot rang out. Derek staggered, eyes wide in shock, and collapsed to the floor. The silence that followed was deafening. But as the echo faded, I looked down and realized Tiana was on the ground too, blood blooming across her side. For a moment, I couldn't move. The gun felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds in my hands, my arms trembling as the echo of that shot faded into the hollow stillness of the church. Derek lay sprawled near the altar, eyes open, unseeing, and just a few feet away, my daughter, my Tiana, was crumpled on the ground, one hand pressed against her side, blood seeping through her fingers. "No." The word tore out of me as I dropped the gun and stumbled toward her. "Tiana, no, baby, no." She tried to speak, but the pain stole her voice. I pressed my hands over the wound, tears blurring my vision. "You're okay. You're gonna be okay. Just stay with me." Her breath came in short, shallow bursts. "Mama," she whispered, her voice fragile as glass. I didn't mean for it to go this far. I shook my head, sobbing. "Don't talk like that. You're gonna make it. Help's coming, you hear me?" Luther groaned somewhere behind us, trying to sit up despite his injury. "I called for backup," he rasped. "They're on their way." Tiana's hand gripped my wrist weakly. "He said he'd hurt Micah if I didn't do it. I thought if I went along, I could control it." "Keep y'all safe." My heart cracked open. All the anger, all the fear melted into a single ache of sorrow. "You should have told me, baby. We could have faced it together." She smiled faintly, a ghost of the little girl I used to know. "You always fixed everything, Mama. I just wanted to fix something for once." Micah crawled out from behind the pew, his eyes wide and wet. "Mama?" he whispered. Tiana turned her head toward him, her breath trembling. "Come here, baby." He ran to her side, clutching her hand. "You're bleeding, Mama. Please don't go." Her tears slipped quietly down her cheeks. "I'm sorry, Micah. I love you more than anything. Never forget that." I bit my lips so hard I could taste blood. "Hold on, Tiana, please." Outside, sirens wailed faintly in the distance. Too far, too slow. She looked at me one last time, eyes soft, the fight finally gone. "You were right, Mama. Love don't fix everything." A weak laugh escaped her lips. "But it's the only thing that makes it worth trying." And then, as the light from the broken window hit her face, she went still. I held her close, rocking her like I used to when she was small. My tears soaked her hair. "I forgive you, baby. I forgive you for everything." The sirens grew louder, the red lights flickering through the broken glass, but I barely saw them, because in that quiet ruin of a church, I'd just lost the one thing I'd spent my whole life fighting for, my child. But even in death, Tiana wasn't done protecting us, because the secret she left behind in Derek's jacket would change everything. I don't know how long I sat there on that cold church floor, holding Tiana, rocking her, whispering her name like it could bring her back. The sirens kept growing louder, until the red and blue lights painted the walls like stained glass from another world. When the paramedics finally rushed in, I couldn't let go. It took two of them to ease her out of my arms. My hands were covered in her blood, my baby's blood, and for a long moment I just stared at it, unable to breathe. Luther was taken out next, pale but alive. He looked back at me as they loaded him into the ambulance, his eyes full of something that hurt even deeper than pain. sorrow. One of the officers knelt beside me. "Ma'am, you're in shock. We're gonna need you to come with us, okay?" I nodded numbly, my gaze drifting toward Derek's lifeless body near the altar. His jacket had fallen open, and something inside caught the light. A corner of folded paper. It felt like the universe itself made me look. "Wait," I whispered. "There's something there." The officer frowned but carefully reached into Derek's pocket, pulling out a crumpled envelope. He handed it to me, still sealed, my name scrawled across the front in shaky handwriting. Loretta. I recognized it instantly. Tiana's writing? My breath caught. My fingers trembled as I tore it open. Inside was a letter, short, written in smudged ink, like she'd written it in a hurry. "Mama, if you're reading this, then I finally stopped running. I never meant for things to go this way. I just wanted to keep Micah safe. Derek had people, dangerous ones. He said they'd hurt him if I didn't cooperate. I played along, trying to buy time, trying to protect you both. But when I realized what he planned, I knew it was too late. I left something that can help you. In the back of the real estate office, behind the file cabinet, a drive. It has everything. His partners, his money trail, the people who made me do this. Please, use it. Make sure Micah grows up free from this mess. Tell him I love him, always. Your daughter, Tiana." The words blurred through my tears. My hands shook so hard the paper almost slipped from my grip. She'd known. She'd been trapped, trying to protect us all along. When I finally looked up, the sky beyond the broken window was turning a deep, golden orange. Morning, and as they led me outside, Micah's small hand slipped into mine. "She's gone, isn't she?" he asked softly. I nodded, voice breaking. "Yes, baby. But she saved us." What I didn't know then was that Tiana's final clue, that flash drive, would uncover something far bigger than just Derek. It would expose the people who'd built the entire nightmare. For days after the shooting, I moved through life like a ghost. Every sound felt distant, every moment heavy with echoes of what had happened inside that church. Micah barely spoke, just clung to me wherever we went. I couldn't blame him. I barely knew how to breathe, let alone comfort him. Tiana's funeral was small, quiet, almost too quiet. The wind rustled through the cemetery trees as the pastor spoke words that my heart couldn't bear to hear. When it was over, I stayed behind, tracing my fingers over her name carved in the fresh stone. "I'm sorry, baby," I whispered. "I should have protected you sooner." But Tiana had left me one last thing, the letter, and the promise of that drive. And I intended to keep my promise to her. Luther, still recovering from his shoulder wound, met me a few days later outside her real estate office. He had a bandage peeking from under his shirt, but still managed that same weary smile. "You sure you want to do this, Loretta? It might stir up more than you're ready for?" I nodded. "Whatever's on that drive is the reason she's gone. I won't rest till I know the truth." Inside, the office was just as Tiana left it. Perfectly arranged, not a single pen out of place. But now, every clean line felt sinister, like she'd been hiding her fear in the details. We moved to the back room, where the old filing cabinet stood lined against the wall. I remembered Tiana's letter, behind the cabinet. Luther helped me pull the largest one aside. Dust clouded the air, and behind it, taped to the wall, was a small black flash drive. I held it like it was made of glass. "This is it." We drove straight to the police station. The detective handling the case, a sharp-eyed woman named Daniels, plugged the drive into her laptop. Files flooded the screen, names, account numbers, offshore transfers, and photos of men in suits meeting behind closed doors. Daniels' face darkened as she scrolled. Good Lord. This isn't just Derek Miles. These are real estate executives, insurance brokers, half of them tied to city contracts. Luther leaned forward. "So they used Tiana to move the money." Daniels nodded slowly. She was a middle link, a clean face. When she hesitated, they sent Derek to finish what she started. My stomach twisted. She tried to protect us, but she was up against something bigger than any of us knew. Daniels closed the laptop, her expression grim but resolute. "We can build a case from this. It'll take time, but we'll get them all. I promise you that." I looked down at the drive resting in her hand, small, silent, but powerful enough to bring justice to my daughter's name. And for the first time since that night, I felt a flicker of peace. But peace didn't last long, because someone else wanted that drive, and they knew exactly where to find me. For a short while, life felt almost normal again. The police had the drive. The case was open. Derek's partners were being investigated. Detective Daniels said I'd probably need to testify once the arrests were made, but I wasn't thinking about courtrooms or justice. Not really. I was just trying to help Micah sleep through the night again without waking up screaming. We moved into a small rental house a few towns over. Quiet street, kind neighbors, an old oak tree in the yard. For the first time in months, the air didn't smell like fear. Still, every time a car slowed in front of the house, my chest tightened. I couldn't stop seeing red lights flashing through broken glass. One evening, as I sat on the porch watching the sunset bleed across the sky, Micah came outside holding one of his drawings. It was of us, him, me, and Tiana, holding hands under a big yellow sun. He looked up at me, his small voice barely above a whisper. "Grandma, is Mama in heaven?" My throat closed. "Yes, baby," I said softly. "She's watching over us." He nodded slowly, studying his picture. "Then she's not gone." "Not really. That boy, he had his mama's heart, even after everything." That night, I finally felt myself start to breathe again. I tucked him into bed, kissed his forehead, and sat by the window, watching the street grow quiet under the soft glow of the lamppost. It was nearly midnight when I heard it, a faint knock at the door. My heart jumped. No one should have been visiting at that hour. I stood still, listening. The knock came again, slower this time. I grabbed my phone, ready to call 911, when a familiar voice called softly through the door. "Miss Loretta?" "It's Detective Daniels," relief washed through me. I opened the door halfway. "Detective, what on earth are you doing here this late?" But the woman on my porch wasn't in uniform. She wore a black coat and a tight smile that didn't reach her eyes. "I'm sorry to bother you," she said smoothly. "We had a small issue with the evidence from your daughter's case. I need to collect the backup drive for security reasons." My blood went cold. There was no backup drive. I studied her face. Same eyes, same height. But something was wrong. The real Detective Daniels had a small scar near her eyebrow. This woman didn't. I took a careful step back, keeping my voice steady. "You're not Detective Daniels." Her smile vanished, and before I could move, she pushed the door open with sudden force, her hand reaching inside her coat. That was when I realized Derek might have been gone, but the people behind him were still very much alive. And they weren't done with us yet. Everything happened fast. The woman shoved through the door, knocking the lamp to the floor. The crash jolted Micah awake. I heard his small gasp from the hallway. "Don't move," she hissed, pulling a pistol from inside her coat. Her eyes were sharp, cold, the kind that had seen too much darkness to ever remember light. I backed up slowly, hands raised. "Please, there's a child here." "Then stay quiet, and maybe the child lives," she snapped. "Where's the drive?" My heart pounded. "The police have it." "It's over," she shook her head, smirking. "You really think the police got everything?" "Derek had copies, and we know your daughter sent one more before she died." "Where is it?" My mind raced. Tiana's letter. The office. The flash drive. There had only been one. Hadn't there? I tried to buy time. "I don't know what you're talking about." Her jaw tightened. "Wrong answer!" She stepped forward, raising the gun, and that's when the front porch light flooded the window. Tires screeched outside. A voice thundered from the yard. "Police! Drop your weapon!" It was Luther. The woman spun toward the sound, cursing, but I'd already moved. I grabbed the edge of the fallen lamp and swung it upward with every ounce of strength left in me. The gun went off, a deafening crack that split the night, but her aim went wild. The lamp shattered against her arm, sending her stumbling backward. The gun clattered across the floor. I dove for it, but Luther burst through the door first, weapon drawn. "Drop it!" he barked, The woman froze, clutching her injured arm. Two squad cars pulled up behind him, their sirens slicing through the quiet night. Within seconds, she was surrounded. It was over. Or maybe it was finally ending. When the officers dragged her away, I stood in the middle of the living room, shaking so hard I could barely stay upright. Micah ran into my arms, burying his face against me. I held him tight, tighter than I ever had before. Luther placed a gentle hand on my shoulder. "You did it, Loretta. It's done now." But all I could do was look toward the stars outside the window, faint and scattered above the oak tree, and think of Tiana. The next morning, Detective Daniels, the real one, called to tell me the woman was part of the same network Derek had worked for. The evidence from Tiana's drive had blown the case wide open. People were being arrested all across the state. Justice was coming. That night, after I tucked Micah into bed, he looked up at me sleepily and whispered, "Grandma, Mama can rest now, right?" I smiled through my tears. "Yes, baby, she can." Outside, the wind moved gently through the trees, like a whisper, soft and forgiving. And for the first time in what felt like forever, I let myself believe it, because love had survived, broken, battered, but alive. And I had kept my last promise. Sometimes the loudest echoes don't come from voices, but from hearts that refuse to stay silent. Loretta's story reminds us that love isn't always soft. Sometimes it's the only thing fierce enough to face darkness and survive it. She lost more than anyone should, yet she found a way to honor her daughter's final act of courage by choosing to keep living, loving, and protecting what mattered most. And maybe that's what real strength is. The kind that keeps whispering through pain, through grief, through generations, an echo that never fades. If this story moved you, share it with someone who believes in the power of forgiveness and family. And if you'd like to walk with us through more voices, more memories, more echoes, don't forget to subscribe, and turn on notifications, because here, every story is a heartbeat from another soul. And every echo carries the truth we almost forgot to hear. This is Echo of Her, where stories live long after the silence.